People ask me all the time, Nick, what is the most important thing to teach your Gundog? And of course, there's always going to be a list. Is it loose lead walking? Is it engagement? Is it neutrality? Is it recall? Is it settling? The list honestly goes on. But if I had to strip it back and I was only allowed to teach 3 things, here are the 3 things I would focus on. And yeah, honestly, it is only 3 things you need to prioritize and focus on. And if you can get these 3 things right, everything else I just mentioned in that list just there is probably going to fall under the umbrella of one of these 3 things. Thing number 1, and this is probably something that is fairly obvious, and that is breed-specific fulfillment. I cannot stress enough how important this is to teach your dog, because more often than not, a lot of the cases that I deal with, 8 out of 10 of the times, it is down to a dog that is very underfulfilled, or an owner who thinks they are fulfilling their dog, but in reality, they're probably not even scratching the surface. And the reason for that is because most people hear the word fulfillment and they think fulfillment means exercise. Now, that isn't necessarily true. Yes, exercise is going to come into the equation and it's very, very important. That is a big part of fulfillment, but the most crucial thing when it comes to fulfilling your dog is not only that you are tapping into exercise, but you're also exercising this. Here's what breed-specific fulfillment actually is. Gundogs were bred to do a job, and that job pretty much consists of them using their nose to search and to have a partnership with the handler. So breed-specific fulfillment means that you are giving them an outlet for their genetics. So not just tiring them out, actually tapping into their instincts and giving them a genetic means of fulfillment. If you are able to satisfy their drives, if you're able to tap into mental stimulation as well as physical exertion, that is the most crucial thing when it comes to owning a Gundog breed. Now, the reason why this is so important for you, the handler, is a lot of people think they are fulfilling their dog. And fulfillment tends to get overcomplicated. And what I tend to see is the problem people run into is they tend to take themselves out of the equation and they just focus solely on trying to fulfill the dog. Now, this could be, say, you take your dog to a field and you've got a ball launcher. To you might think you are fulfilling your Gundog breed, and to an extent, you absolutely would. However, what actually is going on there is all your dog is doing is seeing you as a source of getting more dopamine, chasing more value through the use of that ball launcher. And this can then become quite detriment to your relationship with your dog because they've gone from working with you to using you to get something else. Or say you go to the local woodland and you just let your dog off the lead. Your dog then goes pelting into that woods at 110 miles an hour. Not once do they check back in with you. Not once do they respond to a recall. It is just a complete and utter free-for-all. And as a result of that, you're then teaching your dog to be more independent, and you're not teaching your dog to cooperatively work with you, which is the important, crucial point in order to have successful fulfillment with your Gundog. Or a really common one that often gets underlooked is people give their Gundog breeds a lot of puzzle toys, such as Kongs, licky mats, all of the above. And these are great, don't get me wrong, they're, give your dog something to do, but in the grand scheme of things, all you're teaching your dog is to, 1, independently find their own value, and 2, most of the time when people give their dogs these items, it's because they want them to be occupied doing something else, when in reality, just teach your dog to settle, teach your dog to switch off, and then cooperatively work with them and have a successful session that that way, because then you're not only going to strengthen your relationship with your dog, but it's also going to help you out in numerous other instances as well. So all this does is it just teaches your dog to be fulfilled, but be fulfilled without you. You just become the dealer of all things fulfillment, and it goes away from being cooperative and strays more towards being independent and self-employed. And just for reference, self-employed means that your dog has just learned to make decisions on their own. They've learned to figure out and navigate things by themselves, and they don't necessarily need you in order to achieve that. So that's enough about what it shouldn't look like. Here is what it actually should look like. So pretty much going against everything I just said there, you need to be working more cooperatively with your dog, working on activities that you can do together to not only strengthen your relationship with your dog, but to provide them with mental and physical stimulation through fulfillment to fulfill their instincts. You need to become almost like the director of the fulfillment. You need to be the one that your dog looks to in that moment in order to get the most out of fulfillment. You're working cooperatively with your dog to understand the concepts of what you are trying to achieve. So you stop being the person that is just holding the lead, and you then start to become the person of interest. You become the person your dog wants to spend more time with, wants to interact with, because of the value you are providing via the use of fulfillment. Breed-specific fulfillment with you as the center of the foundation is everything. It is crucial. It is so very, very important. And if I could go right the way back to when I first got my Spaniel, I thought owning the Spaniel was all about just going on long walks and taking them out for hours upon end, covering loads and loads of ground, and chucking a ball in a field was enough to fulfill them. I was very, very wrong. And all I was creating was this bundle of stress and anxiousness and overwhelm, and a dog that was just very, very dysregulated. Whereas if I'd have just taken the time to work with my dog cooperatively and in a way in which we can work together to achieve an outcome, I'd have unlocked so much more with my dog. And that, interestingly enough, ties quite nicely into my next point. If you are able to fulfill your Gundog breed, this is going to not only take like the edge off them, it's not only going to get that initial sort of gas out of the tank, but because you become then the center of pretty much everything else then gets so much easier. Loose lead walking, recall, engagement, reactivity is a massive, massive counterpart of a very underfulfilled dog. So if you're actually able to tap into their instincts and work with them, you'll probably find that a lot of these things get significantly easier. Number 2, we have recall. Recall, if I'm being completely honest, is such an important thing. I work with so many dogs whose world is just so cramped and small and tiny, and there's just very little to it, for the simple factor of they live their lives on a long line, or maybe not even on a long line, they live their lives on a short lead 24/7. Every single walk is controlled by them just being stuck and restricted to this lead simply because they have no recall. They're not reliable off lead. They're not able to come back to their owner because everything else is just way more interesting, or they have so much prey drive, maybe they're reactive. So many contributing factors towards why a dog has no recall, and this is why recall is one of the most important things that I would prioritize with your dog. And I know you're probably thinking like, well, yeah, of course recall is on the list, but I want to talk more about what recall actually is, because the problem is a lot of people are actually teaching it wrong. So it more often than not goes as follows. They teach recall as a command. So they say the command, the dog comes back, and you reward them with a treat. And that works in your garden or a quiet field where there is literally next to nothing going on. But then the very second there is a distraction, all of that pretty much just goes out the window. That could be another dog. With our Gundogs, it could be a bird, it could be a rabbit, it could be a deer. The recall simply just disappears. So here is why it breaks down. Recall doesn't fail because the dog doesn't understand what the word actually means. It simply fails because the dog just doesn't have a strong enough reason to want to come back. There are way more interesting, what we call in dog training, competing motivators in that dog's equation, to which coming back just seems, well, what's the point? The environment is just way more rewarding than what you are. And that isn't a recall problem, that is simply a engagement problem. And this is why thing 1, which is obviously fulfillment, and thing 2 are so deeply connected. If you've built fulfillment with your dog and you become your dog's center of attention, you become really, really rewarding and reinforcing to want to engage with, that dog naturally, intrinsically is motivated to want to work with you. Of course, then when it comes to working on recall, it's really easy, as coming back to you is already a very heavily ingrained habit through all the retrieving you've done, all the hunting exercises you've done together, and so on and so forth. So here is what reliable recall actually requires. Just like I've mentioned, you need to be making sure recall is reliable around distractions. So many people fall into the trap of your little comfort blankets of, I just go on the same walk every single day because I know what to expect, when to expect it, and this is the problem. Yes, your dog probably does become quite reliable on that walk because that's the only thing you've done day in and day out. Here's the thing, guys. We only have our dogs on this planet for as little as 15 summers. That's how crazy it is, okay? Do you really think it is fair for the entirety of your dog's life you just stick to the same route every single day, encountering the same thing every single day? That isn't fair. How would you like it if you were in your dog's position where every single day was like Groundhog Day? You pretty much just consisted of doing the same thing, the same routine over and over and over again. At first, it probably feels great because it's like, oh my God, amazing. But then over time, your dog is going to get bored. They're going to get more daring, more inquisitive as to what is on the other side. The grass is always greener on the other side, and that's exactly what's going to happen here with your dog. They're going to continuously keep pushing and pushing and pushing in order to get more and more, simply because we've just made their world super, super small. So of course, incorporate distractions with your dog. Don't chuck them in at the deep end and expect them to get on with it. Work your way up. Utilize what we call the 85% rule. The 85% rule consists of, you want to get 8 out of 10 repetitions successfully completed in an environment before you progress into the next. Because if you jump your dog into an environment and let's say you get, 3 repetitions, but then the other 10 are absolutely shocking and dogs just could not give a rat's ass about you. And then you think the next day, okay, well that environment wasn't that great, let's just go somewhere else and see what happens. And then you fall into the same trap again. You do another 4 repetitions, it goes pants out of the 10 that you've done, and it's just a complete repetitive cycle of this over and over again. All you're doing is just building up your dog's tolerance to ignoring you in multiple different environments. So stick to one. Proof, which is a terminology in dog training whereby you put your dog in an environment and you teach them something with multiple different things in that environment to strengthen that outcome before progressing into a new environment. You have to make returning to you rewarding, because if you reward your dog, or if you recall your dog, and they come back to you and they just get some half-assed, not really bothered recall, say you just, sat staring at your phone or whatever, and you're just like, oh, Fido, come, and they come running up to you all enthusiastic, and you're there just like, well done, off you go. All your dog is going to pick up on is coming back to you, what's the point? And 2, why don't I just stay out in this environment where I can just gain more interest, more excitement from everything else around me? Again, going back to our previous point about fulfillment, they're just going to very quickly learn that coming back to you just isn't all that worth it. So they're just going to then continue to ignore you. A super, super common one, and this is probably the one that you hear the most as well, is poisoning your recall command. We've all been there. You're out in the field and you've, for whatever reason, let your dog off, even though it's not got great recall, and you say its name. So you're like, Fido, come. Oh, it's not coming back. Fido, come. Fido. Hey, Fido, come. Fido, come. Yeah, just a bit awkward, right? And 9 times out of 10, all you're doing here is poisoning your recall cue. You're teaching your dog that Fido come simply means I don't have to listen to that right now. I can ignore you for a little bit whilst I do this. Recall realistically should mean Fido come, regardless of what's in that equation, you come straight back to me. I don't give a crap if there is a sirloin steak sitting in that field, literally waiting for you to consume it. You come back to me as soon as physically possible when I give that command. It is crucial that you nail that with your dog. And of course, through implementing all these little crucial steps, through doing these training sessions, from working cooperatively with your dog, of course, this is naturally going to increase your relationship with your dog because you're spending quality time with them. You're interacting with them. You're not allowing them to rehearse what you don't want. You're rectifying it and stopping it, which then is going to drastically open up their world. They then start to see you as the controller of freedom, but the controller of freedom to the point where their world is massive and you can literally have no limitations. I use my dogs for this example. My dogs, if I'm being completely honest with you, spend probably 10% of their life on a lead. That is it. There is literally no point for me to have my dogs on a lead due to where I live. So literally where I live, right here, for example, this is pretty much on my doorstep. I can leave my house, cross a road, enter a woodland, and then this is what I have to my disposal. So I literally can just have my dogs go out the house, let them off lead, say my release marker, and they're off and they're enjoying life. They're living it to the fullest. I've got all this space to run around, run free. I'll do my fulfillment exercises. I'll literally give them the best life possible. Just behind me just here, I could walk down this hill, cross another road into another woodland, and they've got an even bigger environment for them to explore with lakes and ponds and all sorts, and they literally are so reliable. They come back every single time. I do not have a worrying concern about them. I can walk them at any time of the day, any point of the day, at any given moment, regardless of what enters that equation, whether it be a deer, a swan, a dog, a person, a child, anything. They are reliable and they will come back. That is the beauty of having a reliable dog off lead. You can just go for miles upon miles upon miles if you wish. Of course, you don't have to do that, but what I'm saying here is through building a relationship, through building a reliable recall, you drastically open up your dog's world, and it is so very important to achieve that with your dog. Thing number 3. Now, this one, to be honest, I think definitely the first 2 that I've mentioned are super important. Like, they are very, very important. Now, this one that I'm about to talk about now does kind of go under the radar a little bit with our Gundog breeds, because we look at a Gundog breed and we think, right, yeah, that is a dog that is just on the go 24/7, 7 days a week, right? They're just built to work. They're built to just work and work and work and be on the go, on the go, on the go. The problem with that is you then start to get a dog that becomes very complacent with doing stuff and constantly being on the go. To which then, when we talk about things like their nervous system and their ability to regulate their nervous system, they aren't very good at it. And that will then quite quickly leak into other areas such as recall, lead walking, reactivity. Your dog becomes quite hyper aware, hyper vigilant, they become quite noise sensitive, and they're constantly overstimulated all of the time due to simply being on the go 24/7. So my last thing that I would highly recommend that you teach your Gundog is settling. And the reason why this surprises so many people is it doesn't really seem all that important. It doesn't seem that impressive. It doesn't really seem like something that is going to be important for you to teach your dog. Now, the crucial thing about settling is you are able to have a dog that is like exactly like I just described there, about how you can go all these mileage, you can do all these things with them, you can interact with them, you can play with them, you can fulfill them, X, Y, and Z. If you've got a dog that cannot settle, that cannot sit still, that is so dysregulated that they have to constantly be doing something, that is a problem. And it's quite a big problem, because having a dog that's not able to settle is obviously having a dog that is very dysregulated, which then means it is leaking into all the problem areas that you are probably facing. If you've got a dog that has quite poor impulse control, that, you know, quite quickly reacts to movement and sound and all these other things, it's quite common that they suck at settling and they just cannot sit still. So this is why it is super, super important to teach settling to your dog, as it's going to massively, massively help you out in the long run. And I genuinely believe if you've got a dog that can settle on cue, that is one of the best skills you can possibly teach your dog. So here is why settling matters the most. Let's put it into perspective of your day, right? So most of us go to work, we come home, and so on and so forth. And you either, take your dog out in the morning, you take your dog out in the evening or whatever. Or there's a lot of people that I work with in my field of work. I work with a lot of people that have busy corporate jobs in places like London. I have clients out in the States that live very, very busy lives where they're like on construction sites and things like that. So they work very long hours, okay? Now, if you've got a dog that, you take them out and they're somewhat reliable and you can fulfill them and you can do these things with them, but as soon as you get home, they constantly want to do something else, or they're following you around the house, or they're reacting to noises, or they're diving at the door when the postman comes, or they're just doing all of these things that equivalent to a dog being very dysregulated. That is a recipe for disaster. It's all well and good you can do stuff with them out on a walk, but if as soon as you bring them home they're not able to actually switch off and chill out and cognitively recover from what it is that they're learning, that is a problem. Say you like to go to a cafe or a pub or something like that. Was it in the States, like a brewery or whatever it is that you guys have, Say you want to do that, but the limitation is you can't take your dog because they can't settle. The minute you get there, they're whining, they're whinging, they're barking, they're jumping up and down, they're reacting to dogs when they come through the door, all this kind of stuff. And that is now something that you are not able to do with your dog. Yeah, you can go off and do it on your own and, there's no harm and you don't have to take your dog, but it's quite nice to be able to have a dog that you can go out and do all these things without on a walk. But then if, say, at the end of that walk, you want to finish up at a pub or a cafe or something like that, you just have a little bit of a chill out, you can achieve that, you can do that. But there's so many people out there that is just unobtainable, or even just the thought of it sends shivers down their spine. A dog that simply cannot settle is a dog that makes all of those scenarios very, very stressful. But a dog that can settle makes all of those situations very achievable and easy to navigate. So here is what settling actually is. So settling isn't a dog that can just lie down, because there's so many dogs out there that you can teach them to lie down and they do it straight away. Settling is your dog's ability to completely switch off regardless of what is in that equation. It doesn't matter if it's another dog, it doesn't matter if it's a busy place where there's lots of people, wildlife, whatever it is, it does not matter. Your dog can simply, via the use of a cue, can settle, switch off and chill out and relax. Now the interesting thing about settling is, realistically, we can't teach a dog to settle because it's a skill set. It's a skill set that the dog needs to develop. So what we need to do is control the variables as much as physically possible to make it super, super easy for that dog to be able to settle. It is not something that is going to come naturally to your dog. As obviously previously mentioned, Gundogs are bred to be wired. They're bred to be on the go constantly. So doing something like this for them is probably going to be quite difficult. But let me tell you this, it is one of the most important things you can teach your dog. I promise you that. So where does settling sit in regards to the other points that I've made in today's video? Well, if you've obviously got a dog that you can fulfill, you've got a dog that you can reliably have off leash, when it then comes to settling and switching off, you've achieved the crucial, most important part, now when it comes to working on settling and switching off, it's going to become significantly easier for your dog to be able to rehearse this, because they're not wired, they're not in a heightened state of arousal, and they're not constantly on the go, because you've given them all that. You've got that initial gas out of the tank. You've allowed them to express that energy in those sessions so that it can now practice being more regulated. And of course, a dog with a lower baseline arousal is a dog that is way easier to train, meaning if you implement all three of these things I've mentioned today, you're probably going to be having a dog that is easy to train. So settling isn't one of those things that it's just like nice to have it, or it's a nice tool to utilize with your dog. Having a dog that is able to switch off is crucial. It's so important, and it can help you in more ways than you probably believe. I've worked with dogs in the past that are exceptionally good when it comes to training. They're very easily recalled, but they're still a nightmare to live with for the simple factor of they cannot switch off. It is almost impossible for them to achieve this outcome. And that's why settling is what actually makes a Gundog enjoyable to live with. So there you have it. 3 things there where every single one of them have been connected in some way. Breed specific fulfillment with you as the center of it is of course then going to help significantly with your recall, to which then when we've achieved both recall and fulfillment, settling and switching off then becomes significantly easier to work through as well. As then settling is going to then help with your dog's baseline arousal and make them overall easier to live with. If you can get these 3 things right with your Gundog, you have definitely got a Gundog that is going to be easier to live with. Not just impressive in the field, but actually enjoyable to live a life with. If you would actually like to go deeper on all 3 of the points that I've listed in today's video, I'm going to link in the description some more videos that you can go ahead and watch where I will be going into much greater detail on each individual point. And if you would like a starting point for all of this, I'm also going to link the handbook in the description, which is going to give you a bit of a Kickstarter into helping out your dog. Drop me a comment which one of these 3 things you struggle the most with your Gundog breed. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and see you next time.